Hi, Kevin Coop here, and this is FaceTime with the Content Guy. So, I'd like to say, just for the record, that no matter what their political positions or the political implications of things that they've said or have not said, or actions they've taken or actions they have not taken, that I have no intention of boycotting. In fact, I have every intention of continuing to buy and use products from companies that include Starbucks, LL Bean, New Balance, Under Armour, and Nordstrom. That's just the way it is. I like all these companies. I think the products they make and sell are relevant to my life, and they haven't done anything so egregious that I'm going to change my shopping behavior when it comes to these particular companies. Now, on the other hand, I think I am pretty much going to boycott Uber. I've deleted their app from my iPhone. I'm using Lyft instead. That has nothing to do with politics. It really has to do with the way they seem to treat their customers and the way they seem to feel they're above the law. I'm just uncomfortable with that, so I've made a decision to change the way I use services like that. But by the way, I would never use the word boycott. You know, that's just something big and organized, and I'm just one guy, and I am the opposite of being organized. I'm just going to try and do the stuff that makes me feel comfortable with my behavior. Now, for the longest time, you know, I actually boycotted Mel Gibson movies, and that's because pretty well established that he was an anti-Semite, and I boycotted Roman Polanski movies because, well, gee, he actually ran away from the country to avoid a rape charge. Now, I've made a couple of exceptions. I recently saw Hacksaw Ridge. I'm not entirely comfortable with that decision. I remember back in 2010, I saw The Ghost Rider, Polanski movie. Wasn't entirely comfortable with that decision. But I sort of decided I was interested in the art and I wasn't going to worry too much about the artist. Now that strikes me as being both an entirely justifiable position as well as a first-class rationalization. And we all know what Jeff Goldblum said about rationalizations in The Big Chill. You know, I say all this, and I'm going through all this because the issue of boycotts has clearly been front and center. There are organizations on both sides of the political aisle that have decided to make how people shop and what they buy and where they buy front and center in terms of their ability to, or their desire to exert pressure on one side or the other. And I'm just not entirely comfortable with that. You know, I think that, listen, I'm much more concerned when people do something that's negative. Like, I'm perfectly comfortable and in fact would go out of my way to avoid patronizing companies that say pollute the air or pollute rivers and things like that. I tend to want to act when it comes to behavior as opposed to statements. I do think we have freedom of speech in this country, and people are able, even if they run big companies, they're entitled to freedom of speech. Although I think certainly you have to say, in the kind of environment in which we live these days, they have to be aware of the fact that they're taking their own company's welfare into their hands when they decide to take one position or another. Now, let me also be clear. I believe in protest. I think back to when I protested against Nixon in 1972, a formative thing that I did in my life. I think people should protest. I think they should be loud and they should be insistent. I totally believe in that. I think that, but I'm not entirely comfortable with the idea that every time somebody makes a public statement, we're just going to boycott the company for which they work. You know, I just can't see it. Listen, just because the CEO of Starbucks happens to be taking a position against the Trump administration when it comes to refugees, or the CEOs of Under Armour or New Balance say things that you know, imply or come right out and say that they kind of are in favor of the pro-Buy American, pro-American manufacturing positions that the Trump administration seems to be espousing. I'm sorry, I can't see penalizing them for that. Again, people have to be able to express their political opinions even if they do so at their own risk. The thing is, I think people draw the line in different places. That's why people and companies have to be careful. People are just going to decide, this is where I'm going to draw the line in terms of how I behave. And for everybody, that line is drawn in different places. And that makes it a very dicey time in which people express political opinions. This would be better off if companies could go out of their way not to express any political positions at all. But we're living in a world where that simply may not be possible, simply because the way they act and what is going to always have political implications. It seems like everything these days have political implications. You know, for my part, I'm just going to try and be intelligent and nuanced about how I change my behavior in response to what companies say or do, with an emphasis on the do. You know, I love the line from Ross MacDonald, the great mystery writer, who once said that people cannot endure inexplicable worthlessness. And quite frankly, that's sort of how I feel about political discourse these days. It's inexplicable and really, really tough to endure. But endure it I will. And I'm going to do it while wearing a pair of running shoes from New Balance, a sweater from LL Bean, a shirt from Nordstrom, drinking coffee from Starbucks. Anyway, that's what's on my mind this Thursday morning. And as always, I want to hear what's on your mind.